Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today, for your weekly top 5 video, we are going over my top 5 premium ships that I regret buying. But Sealord, you buy every premium that comes out because you review them for YouTube. Yes, I do. So the way that we're approaching this video is that if I had to actually pay for these ships, these are 5 ships I would most definitely, regret buying. So that's the point of view that we're going at for this video. But before we get into it, half of you watching right now, over half of you watching right now in fact, are not subscribed to the channel. Yet, you return every day to watch these daily Warships videos. So fix that by heading down below and hitting that big red subscribe button. And then, while you're down there, go ahead, leave a comment and drop a like. And now you have completed the algorithm trifecta, and the algorithm is now pleased and will treat this video kindly. Now that we're done with the YouTuber cringe, just go ahead and get on into it. Coming in at number 5, we have the Tier 10 Italian battleship, the Sicilia. The Sicilia is a ship I was quite excited for. Why? Because we were finally getting properly sized secondary guns on an Italian battleship. And by properly sized, I mean that if you look up and down the Sicilia sides, you'll notice that she has the American 127mm secondary guns. The lore behind the Sicilia is that it's a ship that was surrendered after the Italian, surrender in World War II, sent over to the United States, and then modernized, hence the American 5-inch secondary guns. And yes, those 5-inch secondary guns do fire sap shells, which means that you have secondary guns that can penetrate pretty much whatever they need to at their tier. So they also fire sap, which means they have high alpha levels of damage. So that means you've got some pretty beefy secondary guns here, and we've seen already what the smaller caliber secondary sap guns can do on ships like the Napoli and the Michelangelo and such. So when the Sicilia was announced, I was like, oh yes, this thing is going to absolutely be brutal. Well, turns out there's a pretty big price to pay for having 5-inch sap secondary guns, and that is, well, her maximum secondary range with all of the modules and the commander skills and the flag is a whopping 11.3 kilometers at tier 10, which is just short by tier 10 standards. Most tier 10 secondary ships, and by most I mean pretty much every single one outside of the Sicilia, battleships I should specify here, have at least a 12-kilometer range, with ships like the GK and the Ruprecht, not the Ruprecht, and the Schlieffen having 12.5 kilometers of secondary battery range. The Sicilia doesn't, but Sealord, it's got the Italian exhaust smoke. It very much does have the Italian exhaust smoke, so you can use that to, smoke yourself up, get within secondary range, and then let your secondaries chew on things while you remain completely undetected. That is very, very true. And if that was it, and that was the whole thing, and you could buy the ship in the premium shop or in the armory for cool, fine, whatever. It's an exceptionally situational SAP secondary Italian battleship, fine. But that unfortunately isn't really how you get the Sicilia. You get the Sicilia through the Research Bureau, which means that you have to regrind lines multiple times in order to acquire the Sicilia. So you have to put a whole hell of a lot of work in order to acquire the ship. And you get an exceptionally situational secondary battleship that, in many cases, especially in the current tier 10 meta, won't really be able to do much of, anything because, things are going to be outside of your secondary range. Even when they are within your secondary range, the secondary guns aren't all that accurate because it is slinging 5-inch sap shells out of those American twin 5-inch turrets. So, yeah, it's a ship that's pretty good at dealing with battleships because, with the dispersion, you're still hitting, shooting at a battleship, so you're still hitting the superstructure, the plating or whatever, and you are penetrating it and doing damage to it with the sap shells. But when it comes to dealing with, things like cruisers and destroyers, the dispersion is much less workable. And keep in mind, you're having to get within 11 kilometers of these ships, and many of these ships at tier 10, of course, have things like torpedoes that can very much ruin your day. So, again, it's exceptionally situational, and, if it was a coal ship, fine, it'd actually be pretty good, because, you know, like tier 10 brawls or tier 10 ranked, it is very much workable and does quite well there. But of course, in random battles, the vast majority, the mode where most of you are going to be spending the vast majority of your time, it isn't really worth it, again, considering you have to regrind lines multiple times in order to acquire her. So that's why she's at number 5 on my list, because she is very much viable in certain situations. Just the cost for her is just too much for what you get for, again, things for something that you're going to spend most of your time playing in random battles, right? Alright, so going on our way down now to number 4, we have the Tier 7 Premium British Battleship, the Rodney. The Rodney is another ship that's kind of in the same boat as the Sicilia. Why? Because once again, Rodney, under certain circumstances, is actually very good. Why? So, the Rodney is a Nelson-class battleship, and we have the Nelson in-game already. She is by far one of the single best premium ships in-game. So naturally, following her up with her sister, the Rodney, you've got a pretty high bar to clear there. So that kind of skewed, I think, my expectations for the ship as well as many others. And when she was released, it was just kind of like, oh, it's okay, it's a more brawlery Nelson, but you don't get the super heal. That's kind of rough. And by more brawlery, I mean that it really is a Nelson set to brawl, and that's all it's really good at. It's got the Soviet battleship dispersion gimmick, where the closer you are to the target, the better your dispersion is, which, if you've played Soviet battleships, you know that that doesn't really seem to work half the time. So in a lot of cases, you have your shells just going absolutely everywhere except where you aimed, unless you are at, like, mind-bogglingly close ranges. And even when you are at those close ranges, like I mentioned, it feels like the dispersion doesn't really work half the time. And my Rodney review, dispersion is just god-awful at 6 kilometers away from the target ship, and that's just like, what? That doesn't make sense. Now, you do also get the torpedo tubes that the Nelson class historically had in their bow, which is pretty cool, and they do pack a punch. You get one torpedo per side, and it does 29,000 alpha damage. That's pretty good, and it has a 10-kilometer range. Also pretty good. But besides that, it's pretty much a... Oh, and it gets the engine boost, which, you know, it did very much use in real life to catch up to the Bismarck. That's pretty cool. So, like, there's a lot to like here, but the fact of the matter is that when you give something this much of a tilt towards brawling at Tier 7, a tier where you're going to get up to Tier 8 and Tier 9, and you're going to get a taste of that exceptionally passive, long-range, high-tier meta, it doesn't do well in random battles. Again, the vast majority of the player base spends most of their time in random battles. So in that mode, it's not very good, because again, you're going to find yourself, you know, having to play at your maximum range because you have the Soviet dispersion gimmick. Even though you do have 16-inch guns, which are very large for your tier, you're going to be, you know, just absolutely shotgunning your shots around the target. And it doesn't have the improved heal that the Nelson has in order to kind of, you know, because, like, you're basically telling players when you're in, like, a Tier 8 or a Tier 9 game, hey, go walk up to that Tier 9 battleship that can't overmatch your bow, yeah, go punch him in the face when he can literally just punch right through your bow and citadel you consistently. So it's not great for randoms. It is good if you are top tier, and like I said with the Sicilia 2, if you know you're playing ranked and it's at Tier 7, you're playing brawls and it's at Tier 7, it's great in those modes, but not great in this mode. So again, if I had to purchase this outright as a normal player, I would be quite disappointed in the Rodney. Alright, going our way down to number 3, we have a ship, and the ships from here on down have much less redeeming qualities. They're not okay, they're terrible on randoms, but they're good in XYZ. These are just bad in my opinion. And that is the Tier 5 American Premium Battleship, the Oklahoma. Man, it's kind of insulting that they expect players to cough up money for this ship. Yeah, this ship's just bad. It is so bad. So, the Oklahoma is it's a secondary Tier 5 American dreadnought battleship, as you can tell, and it's not good at anything really. So we do have a more than a few secondary Tier 5 battleships that are quite good, like the Agincourt. The Oklahoma shares none of those attributes that make the Agincourt a good ship. So with the Oklahoma, you get an obscenely long main battery reload for some reason. Not like really any Tier 5 battleship has good accuracy, but I guess to get the secondaries in the Oklahoma, you have to have terrible main battery accuracy and a long reload time to get mildly decent secondaries. And those secondary guns, they get out to 8.3 kilometers, which, again, is not bad by Tier 8 standards. I'm sorry, by Tier 5 standards. But yeah, that's it. That's all you really got going for you. You got 8.3 kilometer secondaries. You have a ship that's ungodly slow. Again, you're stuck at 20 knots because you are an American dreadnought battleship, and you have terrible main battery guns with terrible accuracy and insanely long reload time for your tier. So that means that, at Tier 5, sure, you can get within secondary range more often than not, but your main battery guns are so terrible, and your ship is so slow that most ships, especially in today's World of Warships, most battleships at Tier 5, most lines are starting to get those ships that can break that 20-knot top speed, so they can simply just, walk away from you. And since your main battery guns are terrible, not really a lot dissuading most Tier 5 destroyers just kind of walk up to you and torpedo you. Like, yeah, you got secondaries and all, but the secondaries are by no means that good. So, yeah, this thing's terrible. I would not buy it. It is only a Tier 5 premium, so it doesn't cost that much if it's even available right now. But yes, absolutely. If I had paid real money for this, be it the $20 that you have to cough up for a Tier 5 premium ship, I would be most disappointed indeed, and I highly recommend that you guys stay away from it. If you want a Tier 5 secondary battleship, get the Agincourt. It is so much better than this thing. You'll have a blast playing the Agincourt in a secondary fashion compared to, pulling your hair out trying to play the Oklahoma. All right, going down to number 2, we have the Tier 9 Premium American Destroyer, the Halford. The Halford is just an affront to the entire Fletcher class. And it is such a weird combination of ships in this game, which, granted, in real life, the U.S. Navy really did try this with the Halford. So if you're blind, or if you're just listening to this going down the highway, the Halford is a hybrid American destroyer, meaning that she has a aircraft catapult on her, but she's still a destroyer. So you do get a controllable flight of rocket planes with the Halford, which is just so weird, because if you played literally any of the other hybrid ships in game, you know that, well, when you're flying the planes, you can't really control your ship beyond autopilot. Now, granted, if you're, doing something or playing something like the Issei or the Kearsarge that are battleships, that's not that hard, because battleships naturally tend to find themselves toward the middle or back of the pack. So they have plenty of opportunities to launch aircraft, do their thing, while they are perfectly fulfilling their role as a battleship, right? Now, some cruisers too as well. There are some pretty good hybrid cruisers in this game, but cruisers, again, aren't really a front-line ship in most cases. They are more of a second-line ship, so they do have opportunities to use their planes and still perfectly, fulfill their role as a cruiser. Destroyers, on the other hand, are one of the most active classes in the game. You have to be constantly paying attention to your surroundings and being very active in your role as a destroyer. So then giving a destroyer a plane is saying, okay, now go be a hybrid ship where you have to go and fly your planes around for minutes at a time instead of doing destroyer things. Not really a recipe for success. This time, taking into account that in order to get these planes, the Halford had to give up a turret and a torpedo rack. So that means you are now a Fletcher-class destroyer with only 4 guns, with no increase to your DPM, or your reload, I should say. There's no buff to your reload. And you're now down a torpedo rack, which sucks. Look at ships like the Kid. They give up a torpedo rack. They get much better AA in return. Halford gets planes that... Sure, you can fly them around, and you can, get HE rocket hits on things and start fires, and you can use them to spot. That is very much true, but at the end of the day, what you wind up having is just a worse Fletcher. And the Fletcher is one of the best destroyers in game, and there's so many successful variants and side grades to it that are in and of themselves very good, like the Kid, the Black, the Velos, so forth and so on. But this is very much not one of them. It's an interesting idea that I guess we're getting tried out, and Again, in real life, the U.S. Navy did do this to the Halford, but if you're wondering, it was quickly converted back because it was discovered that, destroyer isn't really the best platform for launching and recovering aircraft. So, yeah, the Halford, if you did spend money on it, if you can make it work, more power to you. Myself, every situation I'm in the Halford, I'd rather have a normal Fletcher, or I'd rather have a Kid or a Black, or one of again, the mini Fletcher variants, Johnston included, right, than having the Halford, because you're down on gunpowder, you're down on torpedo power, which is what the Fletchers are really all about. So, yeah, it's just a weird combination, and they haven't really tried it out with any other destroyers, so I guess, they kind of understand that, yeah, this doesn't really work. So coming on our way down now to number 1, we have the one, the only, the Tier 8 Premium British Light Cruiser, the Tiger 59. The Tiger 59 is in the race to be one of the, if not the absolutely worst ship in game. It is wild to me that Wargaming has not given this thing a little bit of love, or the buff that most of us have been suggesting for some time that would make this ship so much better, which is just giving it HE. So the Tiger 59 is a real still historical ship. I'm not knocking it for that. I'm not knocking the real life historical ship. I'm just saying that the ship in game is terrible. It sucks. So basically, what a Tiger 59 is like, what, 1/6 or 1/4 of a Minotaur. You get one Minotaur turret in the front, one Minotaur turret in the back, granted with the Minotaur shells, with the improved pins and all that jazz. And you do get a fair degree of utility for a Tier 8 light cruiser. You get radar, you get smoke, and you get DFAA, all available to you at one time. So, pretty good degree of utility. But that's it. That's all you get. Oh, and a super heal as well, of course. But you don't get torpedoes, which is very odd for, a British light cruiser. Now, I understand, the configuration that they're presenting the ship as in-game didn't have torpedoes, but, I mean, yeah, no HE, no torpedoes, not really a winning combination there for area denial. So, what winds up happening in a lot of cases is that you're here stuck with 2 Minotaur turrets and a ship that can't really stop anyone from pushing into you because you don't have hydro, so you don't have torpedoes. You don't have HE, so you can't even, throw HE at the enemy ships and kind of force them to disengage from you or burn to death. They just go bow in, and, just tank you for days and push you and then murder you and such. The ship's just, God, it's not a lot of fun to play. And there are some good arguments out there talking about, hey, look, if you've got, a Tiger 59 and a couple of destroyers in a division, or even a Tiger 59, a battleship, and a destroyer in a division, sure, yeah, that is a winning combination, but once again, most players play random battles, most play by themselves. As you see, not every map battle is full of, divisions. So for a solo player, not really a good pickup. And even in today's World of Warships, not even, but in today's World of Warships, there's plenty of other more support type cruises that you can take that are better than the Tiger 59. And it's just a ship that, it's a real struggle bus. It gets citadeled so easily. It does have the super heal to help out with that, but the no torpedoes and the no HE really kills it for many of us. Really, if they gave the ship HE and just gave it the ability to farm a little bit, that would help. And keep in mind, the Minotaur is a Tier 10 light cruiser. This is a Tier 8. I could see this being like a Tier 7 premium ship, maybe with a little bit less utility, but we're only 2 tiers away from the Minotaur, but we have, again, what, 1/6 or 1/4 the firepower of the Minotaur at Tier 8. Just a very, very weird some very, very weird decisions made when it comes to the Tiger 59. So, yes, if I actually, wasn't a YouTuber and I bought this thing outright, I would be most disappointed in trying to return it to Wargaming. But it is what it is. It's in my port now, so I highly encourage you guys to not pick up the Tiger 59 if you could help it. If you get it in a standard container, it's a wonderful port decoration. Don't get me wrong for that. But, yeah. So, guys, those are my top 5 premium regrets. Let me know in the comments down below. What premium ships do you regret purchasing it with your time, during your time with the game, and all of that jazz. Hope you guys have a wonderful Monday, wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.